Good morning, good morning. I'm Coach Gaglione. If this is your first time stopping by, I've been involved with powerlifting and strength coaching for over 18 years. Did my first meet back in 2006. I have elite totals in 5 different weight classes in equipped powerlifting. The first and only man to squat 800 pounds in 6 of them. And today is going to be another of our Climb to 185 series. I got my second strict curl meet coming up this April. It's a new venture. I'm putting myself through the paces, and I'm going to have you guys follow along. So today is going to be another kind of dynamic day, some curls with chains. I'm also going to show you guys some different strategies for just what you might do on a secondary day if you curl multiple times a week. One of the things that is going to be important as you kind of advance on your lifting journey, no matter what the lift is going to be trying to figure out the optimal amount of frequency of your lifts. And typically, what I always say, when you increase your frequency, you are going to increase your risk. But when you increase your frequency, you also have a good chance to improve your rate of exposure, which and thus is going to help accelerate some of your progress. So that's kind of the idea between more frequent training, and it's also a way to just spread out your volume throughout the week. What I recommend to prevent some wear and tear, if you are going to increase your frequency, have a little bit of variation in your training, or at least vary the resistance profile, like through the form of accommodating resistance. So I learned a lot from Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell, and I like the idea of having a heavy day and a light day, or basically a max effort day and a dynamic day. And the dynamic day can be sometimes more volume-esque, so more like sets of 5, but more traditionally, still low repetitions and high amount of sets. We're working on form and force production on this day. But you can also do, especially for the upper body movements, but really any movements if you want to try to put on a little bit more muscle, just to get a little bit more volume in. If you want to work more on the strength speed side of the continuum versus speed strength, you could also do, even upwards of sets of 5. So I think I'm going to be doing 5 sets of 5 on this day. I'm going to check my program on Turnkey Coach to double check that. And I'm also going to show you guys some different strategies. If maybe you don't have access to chains, but you want to maybe do a secondary day, what are some things that you could do? We're going to go over cluster training. We're going to go over halted reps, depending on what you're trying to work on. So stay tuned. I'm going to warm up a little bit more, and then I'm going to get into my first specific working set. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into my Turnkey Coach app and kind of check my program. So last week I did around 8 triples on my dynamic day. So this week I'm going to do, looks like I'm doing 6 sets of 4. So the kind of the progression that I'm kind of using right now early in the phase, and sometimes this could flip-flop, sometimes this can change, but I'm trying to get better at repetitions. I'm trying to get better at my technique, better at speed. So instead of just only doing triples on this day, and that will change as I get closer to the contest, I'll kind of keep the reps lower. I'm using a combination of 8 sets of 3, 6 sets of 4, 5 sets of 5. So kind of, if you watched last episode on our dynamic day, I guess it's 2 episodes ago now, Proplin's chart, we're kind of looking for like that 25 optimal rep range for this kind of speed zone. So if the total system weight is around somewhere in the neighborhood of 75%, getting around 25 total repetitions is kind of a good place to start. So my working sets is going to be 6 sets of 4. I'll probably use somewhere between 120 to 130 pound range for that. But as I warm up, I'm also going to show you guys some different strategies. I'm going to kind of show you guys that now. So let's say you don't have chains, or maybe you just want to switch things up. So if your setup's a problem, or if you're newer to strict curl, doing cluster training on your lighter day can be a really good idea. So cluster training, let's say I'm doing a set of 5. Instead of just doing 5 continuous reps, I'm going to set the bar down. And you can kind of play with how you actually do that, but the way I like to do cluster training is that you set the bar down in between every single rep, and then you'll have a dedicated, you could have a short rest time, maybe a breath or 2. So I'll do a repetition, set the bar down, let go completely. So what this allows me to do is to get more first repetitions, and allows me to practice my setup and my pick. So it's really good for improving your technique, but also you're starting every single rep from a dead stop. Matt Gary, famous strength coach that worked with a lot of great lifters in the IPF over the years, he exclusively programs singles for his deadlift. So instead of doing 5 sets of 5 at 75%, he might program 25 singles instead of 5 sets of 5, and that's going to allow you to break the floor every single time. So you can use a similar strategy for your strict curl training, because a lot of times when people are newer, they mess up their foot placement, they mess up the pick, and a better start's going to yield a better finish. The other thing that you could do, if you want to build more strength in the bottom, or you struggle with your start commands, is do halted reps. So you're going to actually pause in the bottom for a second, and then kind of go down, 1,000, drive up, 1,000, drive up, 1,000, drive up. So that's going to be more realistic. So just kind of like, again, with your deadlift training, instead of doing touch and go reps where you're introducing a lot of momentum and kind of bouncing the weights off the floor. Now in a strict curl, you're not going to necessarily bounce the weights, but you can be reactive and get that stretch reflex. So sometimes eliminating that stretch reflex, especially on your lighter day, is going to help you build more strength in the bottom and have a higher transfer to your 1 rep max and your single strength. So clusters are a great way to practice your setup. And again, make sure that, again, you're having no momentum into reps 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And then also dead stop or halted reps are going to be a great way to do your repetition training, whether you have a speed day or a volume day, or maybe you're doing some lighter back down sets. So I'm going to try to do mostly halted reps today, but sometimes the benefit of doing more reactive reps, if you are a little bit stronger, if you're stronger than you are explosive, sometimes also doing some more dynamic reps where you're taking advantage of that stretch reflex can be good, or if you are maybe weaker in that lockout position, that's some considerations there. But in general, for building strength and building muscle, eliminating momentum, starting your reps from a dead stop is going to be a good place to start. So I'm going to get into my working weights. Again, I'm going to try to at least start off with some halted reps, and then when I get into my working sets, we'll kind of see how things feel. I'm more concerned with bar speed, force production, and form, and that will kind of dictate if I do halted reps in my working sets or not. All right, so now we're going to get into our first warm-up set of the day. So this is going to be 80 pounds and 120, and 20 pounds of chain. I'm used to using higher amount of chains for my equipped squatting and deadlifting. We're using 20 pounds of chains on this day. A lot of people ask, how much chain weight you should do. I would say somewhere between 10 and 20% on average most of the time. And again, if you're trying to work on, most people are going to be trying to work on the middle of that kind of force velocity curve. They're going to try to have a good amount of bar weight, a good amount of chain weight, not too unbalanced. But sometimes if you're trying to really try to maybe save your joints and just kind of really overload the top, it could be a little bit on the higher side. If you're trying to use it as a peaking strategy, sometimes it might be better off to use a more modest amount of chain weight. But for most cases, 10 to 20% is a good place to start. Again, my best ever curl is 180 pounds. So again, just for easy math, if I was a 200-pound curler, 20 pounds of chains would be 10%. So 20 pounds of chains for most men is going to be a good place to start. If you're just starting out, you could certainly use a smaller chain. If you are someone that's more experienced, or you want to kind of overload the lockout a little bit, I also have these heavier chains, which are 27 pounds, and I'll use those from time to time, sometimes in like a peaking situation. So I'm going to do a couple of halted reps here to keep myself honest, and we're going to do sets of 4 on this day. As you can see, I'm still kind of working beltless, and I'm kind of exploring that as an option with the intention of improving my bar path. Again, 80 pounds and 20 pounds of chains. First warm-up. Felt pretty good. I'm gonna do just one more kind of mini set there. So this would be kind of like if I was talking about cluster training again, maybe just a breath or two, and I'll go right into it. So whether that's a couple of reps or just singles, I like to really do kind of clusters. So if I was doing a set of 5, I would just do like 5 singles with a full reset. I'm going to do, 2 sets of 4 right now as part of my warm up with, again, a short rest period, a breath or two. So feeling pretty good. Probably take one more warm up and then we'll go into working sets. So on a speed day, sometimes you don't necessarily need to do a ton of warm up sets because the percentage is going to be lower, but you do want to make sure you're firing on all cylinders. You do want to make sure that your body is actually physically warm. So you notice I was kind of wearing my, sweatshirt in the beginning. I'm still wearing this hat. I'm also wearing this hat to keep the microphone in place, but if you look at some of the lifters on the wall, like Chuck Vogapol and a lot of those Westside Barbell guys, they would often wear that flame skull beanie, and it's also a little bit of, nostalgia and style points, I suppose, for us kind of lifters that maybe started either in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Westside was in its heyday. That was kind of where I grew up, so that's kind of why a lot of people ask like why I chose to do equipped lifting, and a lot of people don't know, but that's like what powerlifting was. There was no like separate categories in the APF. If you wanted to just wear knee wraps, they actually put you in single ply for a while. Raw with wraps is very new. Raw with sleeves and just raw powerlifting in general is still relatively new. I would say probably in the early 2000s, you actually had to go to special federations to compete. 100% raw was one of the most popular and kind of the pioneers of like the strict curl competitions. I did a power curl competition in the WNPF in 2006. I was a former record holder. Those records are frozen. They have since changed the rules, and I believe they're doing strict curl now. So I did a curl where there was no back support, so it was a little bit easier. I believe I did something like either 143 or 148 because it was like, I think the lift was in kilos. And I actually brought the record back home from, it was a world championship meet. A Canadian had the world record in the WNPF. I brought it back to America, so I was pretty happy with that. So that was pretty cool. So now I did a strict curl meet back at the end of 2023. Due to some injuries, I was not able to compete in the strict curl last year in 2024. So I'm looking forward to get some redemption because I haven't had to pull out of a meet in quite some time, and certainly not because of an injury. So in any case, I'm putting myself through the paces. I'm going to be competing on April 26th in Virginia. And a big part of what these dynamic days, these speed days, are really important for really refining your form. And you want to take these reps just as serious as you would your max effort reps. You want to treat these reps as if it's your max, so that way you get that optimal force curve. I always kind of use the analogy of you could throw a wiffle ball, you could throw a shot put, you could throw a baseball. The baseball is going to give you that optimal weight in terms of throwing it the furthest. It's going to be the optimal amount of force production. So that's kind of why you want to use somewhere between 55 to 65% if you're using a common resistance, and then upwards of maybe 75% if you're going straight weight and you're just doing maybe some clusters. That's going to allow you to create the most force. It'll be heavy enough to elicit an adaptation and allow you to become more powerful. So I think we got 100 pounds on the bar now, 20 pounds of chains. I'm going to do a cluster here, and then I'm going to omit the clusters moving forward, but I'm going to still kind of try to do some halted reps. Again, just taking a breath or two. Take a little break, throw those blues on, and then we'll get into our first working set. One of the things that I think is important, whether it be heavy sets or lighter sets, that you have some strategy for what you're going to be doing in between your sets. So like, what are you doing with your rest time? I like to log my work in Turnkey Coach. That way I don't kind of forget what I'm doing. So you'll kind of see me doing that periodically throughout the workout. And then if you want to keep yourself on, especially if you're training alone, I know a lot of people don't have a crew to train with. I don't have a regular crew anymore. And I certainly don't have a crew for strict curl training. But if I was working within a group, my rest time would just be when my training partners are going. If you're training by yourself, and just giving yourself a dedicated rest period is kind of good. On a speed day, those rest periods are going to be relatively short. That's also going to increase the difficulty and the challenge of the workout. So you can kind of produce force in a fatigue state, much how you might feel in a contest. Again, with the strict curl, since oftentimes it's not attached to a full powerlifting competition, it certainly could be, but most of the time it's a single lift event. So there's a little bit less of a demand on, being in, I guess, better shape, if you will, when you're doing a full meet. When I was super heavyweight, for example, when I was at my strongest, when I was squatting 900 pounds, even upwards of 1,000 pounds in training, I never was able to get all my lifts together on the platform. I was very strong for a single lift, but I couldn't get all my lifts together. I was very gassed. Even when I squatted 900 pounds in competition, I was basically spent. After that, I couldn't really deadlift well. I couldn't bench well after that. So a lot of my best performances were in the 220 and 242 weight class, where I was in better shape, a little bit more well-rounded, but still had enough muscle, still had enough skill and force production to have my best totals. My best total in competition is 2,100 pounds. My best Wilks score, I did a 2080 total in the 220 weight class, and I've done 2,100 totals as a 308 and as a 242, a light 308 nonetheless, but so maybe I'll do another meet in the 275 class in one day, and maybe I'll get 2,100 pounds in 3 weight classes. But in any case, I'm going to get to it. I think it's important to have dedicated rest periods and also to log your work. This is 120 pounds. I'm going to count this as my first working set. So we're going to do around 6 sets in this kind of range. Depending on how I feel, I may stay here. But I am allowed to go up to 130 pounds, which would be an additional 5 pounds on each side. All right, so enough yapping for me. I'm going to try to keep these halted, but we'll kind of see. Again, like I said, my main concern is just the bar speed and the form. So if that's going to be an issue, then I will be a little bit more reactive with my reps, because I would say I am stronger than I am explosive. So again, for me, it's not as much of an issue, and maybe you could even argue that I should try to be more reactive. So it's really you need to understand your intent of the day and also what your strengths and weaknesses are as a lifter. All right, so this is 120 pounds and 20 pounds of chains. So I think what I may do, I like to move that a little faster. I'm going to review that on video, log it in Turnkey Coach. I may do maybe half halted, half dynamic, but we'll kind of see. Sometimes things feel worse than they look on camera. That's why it's good to have a subjective measure and an objective measure. So if you're able to use some devices like measuring bar speed and things like that, but sometimes your mind can play tricks on you. So just because something felt a certain way doesn't mean that's like reality. So you have to kind of sometimes check your perception. That's kind of one of the knocks on RPE, the rate of perceived exertion. Having something that's more tangible, like actually measuring bar velocity, like things like that of that nature. And I just like the language of reps in reserve a little bit better. I just think it makes more sense. It's a little bit less ambiguous than rate of perceived exertion, but in any case, it is good to like rate your sets. It is good to start to try to be in tune with your body, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should make an adjustment all the time. But it is, again, feedback nonetheless, and you should use that feedback accordingly. So I'm going to rest about a minute and do another set. So after reviewing the footage, those look pretty good. They weren't blazing speed, but appropriate, I would say. So I'm going to do another set halted here, and then we'll kind of see how this goes. Maybe I just, again, needed to wake up a little bit. 20-pound jumps is a big jump on a strict curl. So I went from 80 pounds to 100 pounds, now to 120. So that's something where sometimes my first set is not always the best, especially if I'm making a bigger jump like that. Typically in a contest, 5 to 10 pound jumps at my strength level is going to be like the absolute limit in terms of a big jump. So a 20-pound jump is pretty substantial for a strict curl. You have to understand it's a higher percentage of your 1 rep max. So the margin for error is much lower. So in any case, I'm just going to try to do this better. Set number 2, 120 pounds, 40 pounds chain. I think my lovely wife just got here. We'll see if she wants to make a cameo or not. So I think the form is good, but I'm not really happy with the speed. But I'm going to give one more shot halted, try to improve it, and then if it's not as good, I'm just going to go to the dynamic reps because I want to really work on that form and force production and the bar speed. All right, so this will be my last set halted, and then we'll kind of try to be a little bit more dynamic with our reps. Set number 3, 120 pounds, 20 pounds chains. Not too shabby. I'm just getting a little fatigued with the rest period, but I'm going to do 3 more sets at this weight, and you're going to see the difference between a more dynamic rep and a halted rep and how I can use the stretch reflex. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa. Set number 4. I'm going to do 3 sets with a dynamic style rep. And you can kind of see how I could utilize the stretch reflex. I don't like to use the word bounce, but that's kind of the first word that came to my mind. But it's going to allow you for a little bit more of a rebound. Maybe that's a better word. Because I don't want to bounce off my tendons. I don't want to, you know, I really don't want to encourage the use of momentum, to be honest. But you are going to be kind of keeping that stored energy and allow for a better rebound at the bottom. And that could be useful if you want to train your body to be faster, if you want to be more explosive, and if you want to transition to your lockouts. So again, set number 4, 120 pounds and 20 pounds of chains. So you can see the difference. That was good speed. I was able to kind of gather some momentum, and I don't mean momentum like as far as bouncing, but momentum in terms of kind of building your confidence a little bit. So that felt really good. It just goes to show you. So that kind of indicates to me that maybe I need to do a little bit more halted reps on this day, or at least start with my sets halted, because that's going to, again, build my confidence a little bit more when I go back to a more normal tempo, or more kind of explosive tempo. So pretty happy with that. That was great. So that definitely gives me some ideas for my own training and kind of our athletes, our team members training. So we're gonna do 2 more. 2 more to go. One of the things that, it's one of those things where I kind of get the idea, but it's kind of like a pet peeve, and I also even need to catch myself with my own thinking. There's kind of this mentality like last set, best set. But if you really want to be serious about powerlifting and strict curl and strength training and just training in general with weights, you need to have the mentality, every set, best sets. Every set, even your warm-ups, you want to have intent, you want to have focus. You don't want to kind of waste your warm-ups. Every time you touch the bar, it's an opportunity to either reinforce good or bad techniques. So you always want to treat every set with respect, and you want to take every set seriously. And that's one of the reasons why I'm more of I tend to favor intensity over volume and frequency, just because, just from mental bandwidth, it's just easier to put in effort. It's easier to have intention and focus when you're doing less, and you can kind of put more into each set. So even though I'm doing a high amount of sets on this day, it's a more sub-maximal weight, so that makes it manageable. And on those max effort days, you're going to get in and get out, go really hard and heavy. It's going to be should be a shorter amount of work. It might take you longer because you're having bigger rest periods, but you're not really doing too many things, too many working sets. All right, so this is set number 5, 120 pounds, 20 pounds of chains. So I think the set before was a little bit better. I think I'm just starting to feel fatigue. But we have one more nonetheless. Try to clean it up and then move on. All right, this is set number 6. I'm gonna try to finish on a high note, good note. And while the last set may not be the best set, you still wanna give it 100% focus, and you also wanna make sure that you reinforce good technique in that final set, not just mail it in. One of the things that you'll see is I really take my time with my approach. Once the bar is loaded in competition, you have a minute. So take that minute, gather yourself, visualize your setup, visualize the execution of the lift, and visualize your success during the lift. And that's kind of what I'm kind of walking myself through my head before I even do the lift. So the lift is kind of done in my mind before I actually do it in the physical realm. So that's a little kind of sport psych trick for you. Happy with that. So I did 6 sets before on my dynamic day with 120 pounds, 20 pounds of chains. I'm gonna go log my work in Turnkey Coach, make some notes that I did half the reps halted and then half the sets halted and then half the sets with a more dynamic fashion. So that's all good. I appreciate you guys stopping by. If you guys enjoyed the video, please subscribe, please share it. It would mean a lot. There's not a lot of information out there on strict curl, and there's still a lot of insight you guys can gain from someone who's been in the sport of powerlifting for over 18 years and been coaching people the same amount of time. So nearly 2 decades of competitive and coaching experience. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.